The Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts are an industrial region in the eastern part of Ukraine. The area is also known as the Donbas, short for Donetsk Coal Basin. But you've probably heard this short name in connection with Russia's war against Ukraine. The Kremlin has repeatedly claimed rights to these territories, justifying their actions by allegations that historically those are Russian territories. But if you really look at history, you will find that the Donbas and Ukraine have at least 400 years of common history, and Russia has always played the role of an invader in this region. The first permanent settlements on this land were founded by the Cossacks in the 15th century. The word Cossack meant a free man, and the Sich, the administrative and military center of the Cossacks, had its own self-government and was not subordinated to any of the existing states. These lands, now known as the Donbas, were under Cossack control until the 18th century. On the 23rd of April 1775, the Council of the Imperial Court decided to liquidate the Sich. The Cossack army was declared disbanded. The imperial government began to distribute the land among the landlords and to enserf the Cossacks. In addition, the Russian Empire began implementing a policy of ethnic replacement, repopulating these lands with peoples of other nationalities of the empire, such as Greeks from the Crimea. The Russian Empire also invited Germans to colonize the region. German colonization lasted until the end of the 19th century. In 1882, 6,000 Germans lived here. It should be noted that Donetsk itself did not exist until 1869. Its prototype was founded by the Welsh businessman John James Hughes. The locals pronounced his name John Hughes and named the city Yuzivka in his honor. In 1872, he opened a metallurgical plant. Equipment and engineers were brought from the UK. The Welsh electrified the village and built a railway linking the Hughes' factories with the cities of Kharkiv and Kursk. After Hughes, the French began to invest in the region. They bought up the mines and developed the coal industry. In 1883, French bankers and entrepreneurs set up a saltfield development company. The enterprise bought up the salt mines near the town of Bakhmut and set up an industrial company with a salt works. There were 20 factories built with foreign investment between 1895 and 1900. As a result, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, for all practical purposes, the Donbas was a fully European, not Russian region. But even more importantly, in 1897, the majority of the population of the Donbas was still Ukrainian, more than 62% of the population. The Soviet government nationalized the factories and plants. For propaganda purposes, Yuzivka was renamed to Stalino, and the Donbas was engulfed by a massive wave of Russification. The late 1920s saw a purposeful resettlement of workers from Russian provinces to the Donbas. That was part of the Soviet government's strategic policy. In 1932-33, the USSR engineered a famine that later came to be known as the Holodomor. Its primary goal was the elimination of the Ukrainian rural people, and in the Donbas, they made up the bulk of the local population. As the result of the famine, in some Donbas villages, the population dropped by 20%. The emptied houses were soon occupied by those who came from Russia. Between 1936 and 1938, the Donbas was subjected to the most massive repression. It accounted for about a third of the overall number of executions in the country. Unfortunately, the calculated strategy of the Soviet regime worked. According to the 1989 census, 43.4% of the population of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions considered themselves to be Russian. However, even the years of occupation and repressions could not destroy the Ukrainian spirit. In the 1991 referendum, the majority of the population voted for Ukraine's independence from the USSR. Today, we see that Russia is still sticking to its millennium-old imperial methods. Ukrainian lands are being seized, Ukrainians are being forced to flee and leave their homes, while the occupied cities are being repopulated with Russians. Back in 2014, up to 2 million people were forced to leave the Donbas, following the occupation of parts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. In 2022, during Russia's full-scale invasion, the aggressor country spread the practice of terror throughout eastern Ukraine. More than 40,000 Russians were brought to Mariupol alone. Hundreds of years of history prove that the Ukrainians, the inhabitants of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, have been victims of Russia's imperial policy for generations. And this has nothing to do with the relation of the ethnicity of the region's inhabitants to Russia. It's all about the aggressor's obsession to appropriate what belongs to others and to subjugate other nations.